And so, with our continuation of decluttering your mind, to mental declutter, in that there is so much, especially as being an entrepreneur, there is so much that really goes into that. One thing that I would say is I wish I would have known more before I started, before I truly stepped out. But then at the same time, I am where I am, and I probably think that things, I wouldn't say be the same, but it just means I would have had more knowledge and probably would have approach it in a different way. But at the same time, there was different things going on in my life as well. So, in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, I do. In last week, I talked some about mental clutter. How can you, like decrease that? Because there's so much information, that's out there. So what I want to say, if anything that I've learned from my lived experience and by being a licensed clinical social worker, I worked in various settings, and especially when I worked in the emergency room, when I worked in the behavioral health call center, and even in the insurance company, but the emergency room, doing telehealth, all of, dealing with crisis and then dealing with my own crisis, if anything that I've learned, and I'm passing this information on to you, especially for those of you who are entrepreneurs and women who are 40 plus entrepreneur who are purpose driven. You have a calling. There's so much on your plate. There is a lot of mental clutter. But let me tell you, what I learned is that our thoughts and our actions play a key into our mental health, into our mental wellness, into our well-being. Now, I'm not getting into like the mental illness part of it. That's not my role here. If you want that, definitely schedule an appointment with a therapist. But in saying that, last week I had introduced you all to the 7M. The 7M is a framework that I created because there was so much mental clutter when I stepped into, entrepreneurship. It's like, I enrolled in 2 and 3 coaching programs, and they were excellent, but I wasn't ready. I'm like, what is all of this? You know what I'm saying? But if anything, they did serve as a foundation. And what I have found, it was like, okay, Sharon, do this, Sharon, do that, do this, do that, and all of this. And then even though, let's say they all had their specialty, and in that it wasn't that I was getting mixed messages. It's just that the messages wasn't consolidated. And this is what I want to do for you. So with the 7M's daily focus and execution system, is I'm going to run through them, and today I'm going to focus just on 2 of them. So again, it is your mission, your why, meditate for at least 10 minutes, motivate, do something to fuel your mind, to motivate you, whether it's a podcast or something. Movement, and movement, there's 2 things, and I'll talk more about that today. And then manifest, visualize yourself to the end, and then market and monetize. And so in saying all of that, and one thing I want to say is, if you want to be on time, time yourself. Time yourself. If your mind works like mine, you need it in that, in and of itself. And so when it comes to mental clutter, do not just continually to take things in, because you're getting information here, you're getting information there, but where are you releasing that information? Where you're sorting that information, and you can do that with the 7M. And make sure that you either comment, and if you're somewhere where there's a link, get the 7M execution system now, because it's going to help you to pretty much plan and sort so that you won't be all over the place, because that's exactly why I had created it. So when it comes to your mental clutter, it's just think about it, especially for those of us who are 40 plus. We have decades of information, decades of personal experiences, and especially for those of you who are mothers, who are a wife, those of you who are a spouse, you have so many different roles. And especially for those of you who are daughters, who are sisters, who are godmothers, a mentor, there's so many roles that you have. And then by you being purpose driven, and then you're like, oh, wait a minute, I gotta learn the business side of this. Like, oh my, I just can't just talk about it. But in saying that, because sometimes you really can be moving in so many different directions, but if anything, you want to center yourself. And one of the ways you center yourself is by planning, because that helps release some of the mental clutter that you have. A lot of times, some of you like to skip this part, or either you may spend too much in the planning stage and not in the implementation stage. And so they both are equally important. Kind of think about the planning stage as your thoughts. If you your vision in and of itself. So you're writing those things down. You're sorting where where your mental resources would be, and you're scheduling out, how that would be. And so remember what I said earlier, if anything that I learned is pretty much when it comes to your thoughts and when it comes to your actions, that's your behaviors. Some of those things may have those knee-jerk reactions, but you can train yourself not to, have those knee-jerk reactions. And so one of the ways that you can eradicate your mental clutter is by sorting them out. And so with the 7M, we're going to focus on on movement and manifest. And so with movement has two parts. Movement has two parts. One of the first part is moving your body, and moving your body is one way of how you can stay grounded and you can center yourself. And y'all, I'm going to say this again. It is not a weakness. It is not a weakness. For whatever reason, we get this message. Believe me, I know. I've gotten it myself. It's like, oh, we got to be just in a certain way. And even anything that I've seen as a therapist, as a licensed clinical social worker, nowadays, we got to say that. If we have those titles, right? But anyway, when it comes to your thoughts, when it comes to the mental clutter, in that, if anything that I've learned, I want to say like the first decade by me being in the field, I didn't know what was going on. You know what I'm saying? They're like, oh yeah, if anything, it's beneficial for us to go to therapy. But I'm like, also, because everybody is made up different, having embodiment practices, having embodiment rituals, and that's another reason that you follow me, you know what I mean? Having embodiment practices is key. Moving your body. There was a reason when we were kids that we played football, we played volleyball, we played tag. Those things were natural for us. There is even a reason we all have like a baseline soothing mechanism. Now, if you're really young, they're thinking that you're overactive, if you're rocking, if you're tapping, if you're humming. But those are self soothing rituals, self soothing. I don't like to really call it, coping mechanism, but there are things to nurture yourself. But then I can even remember being a teenager. It wasn't myself, but it was more so what I saw out into the world. But if anything, it was the message that I got was like, even for girls, definitely for boys, there's certain things you're not supposed to do because, like once you turn 13, it's almost like you're no longer a kid. You know what I'm saying? But at least that's the message that I got. No one may not have verbally told me this. And hey, if you are a first daughter, if you are an older child, especially an older female, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? In that, somewhere we get the message that we can't be playful, that we can't do certain things. But let me tell you that when it comes to your body, it is so important for you to center and ground yourself. Y'all, it is a human thing. It has nothing to do with being strong. It has nothing to do with being weak. It has nothing to do with being, like you're vulnerable or something's wrong with you. Oh, this top-notch person got a degree or is a therapist. They got to ground themselves. Yes, because they are tools to help you through life, but especially for those of you who have a calling, for those of you who is purpose driven. Because if you do not center yourself, if you do not ground yourself, I'm going to say this very gently. Sometimes you create the detours. Not always, but sometimes you do. Now, detours are going to happen. There's going to be distractions. There are going to be roadblocks, but these are the things that help you. So, what are some embodiment practices, somatic practices? We use those words. And even though I am a therapist, and like when it comes to somatic practices, somatic therapy, there's a whole modality around that. But a lot of the things that there's a modality around, they've been there for ages. So you mean to tell me, and again, everyone is different. But I'm talking about daily practices. I'm not talking about for those who, quote unquote, need therapy. If you need therapy, this message isn't for you. And this is one of the reasons why I decided to create Self Care U Academy, because what I saw when crisis would arise is that we're not doing the basic of grounding ourselves, of centering ourselves, of doing the things to nurture your nervous system, to recondition your nervous system from the things that we got conditioned from, and to retrain your nervous system. It's just a human thing. But for those of us who have a calling, it's even more so because of the fact you're going to have, there's going to be disagreements. You know what I'm saying? They're going to be detours. They're going to be distractions. Even when you are collaborating with other individuals, there are going to be times that you're not going to agree with everything. There are times you may just need to split. But it's kind of like, how do you set yourself up where you can use discernment? You do not use discernment at the cuff when the emotions are like all over the place. It's like, oh no, or you get quiet or you hesitate. That is not discernment because you're doing something to hold the peace. But embodiment practices, somatic practices. Now, if you have other things going on, you may need to seek therapy. But I'm talking about everyday things that you can do So you can dance. What's your favorite song? Put it on for 5 minutes. Allow that to be one of your Take 5 to Thrive today. That you're integrating at least 5 minutes a day, minimally. But do that as often, because you say you have a calling, but how are you calling upon yourself? You say that you are a vessel, but how are you taking care of your vessel? And you do that with movement. And even if you sit down for 5 minutes and breathe for 5 minutes, I kind of call it your heart is moving. You center your heart with the rhythm of your breath, and that's movement too. And it takes some work. Retrain yourself, because the more that you are able to do that, the more that you can be connected to your calling, and you're not draining yourself. That's the main thing, so that you can truly be present. Now, the other part of movement is, what action are you taking? Are you doing? What action or task or activity are you doing that is in alignment with your mission, with your goal, with your vision? Because you have this big global goal or mission, and then you have some goals that's attached to it, and then there are activities or tasks to get you there. And I like to say, sometimes by being heart-centered, you can get distracted and start binging or something else that is not in alignment with your mission. And so by having the 7 M's, this is a framework to help you stay focused on your mission. So again, with movement, it's 2-part. How are you moving your body? Again, you can dance, you can do yoga, you can do Tai Chi, you can run, you can walk. Even you can hum, because that, is still vibrational. But what are you doing to be healthy? That's the other part. Because if anything, if you do not integrate self-care into your day, into your life, especially as someone who has a call and who is purpose driven, you will run yourself to the ground. And we're no longer being proud. Oh, I'm doing all of this and I'm doing all of that, but you're not taking care of yourself. No more. No more. Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself, because of the fact, we want people to be able to look after us and not take care of us. And granted, we know that different things happen. And I'm not talking about that, but I am saying that you're doing everything that you can to make sure that you are taken care of. And that starts with you centering yourself, grounding yourself. Because sometimes you have to not think about somebody else for at least 5 minutes. Can you do that? Because if not, it is wear and tear in your body, wear and tear in your mind. Then you're creating the cortisols. So how do you override that? You override that with movements, with rituals. And then again, to make sure that the activities that you are doing on a daily basis, at least one activity, is in alignment with your mission. Now, moving on to manifest. So, when it comes to manifesting, at its simplest, I'm going to say at its simplest form, I'm going to say this first. We are always manifesting with our thoughts and with our actions anyway. So this is why it is so important to be intentional about your thoughts. You can observe your thoughts, but be intentional of how you think. And sometimes you may need to put a stop of certain thoughts that you have, especially if it's negative, if it is not, for your greatest good. Sometimes you don't need to be listening to yourself. Change that. So, again, we have that regarding manifest, is that the things that you say and the things that you do equals manifesting. That's at its simplest form. On another level, when it comes to manifesting, is to visualize and affirm your success daily, aligning with your thoughts and actions and what you want to create. And I'm looking at something because of the fact there is another definition that I have. I guess you can say that allows me, let's see, where is it? Let's see, is this it? Appreciate you all of being patient with me, looking for things to come up. Okay, yeah. So pretty much the main thing to remember about manifesting is seeing yourself finishing, thriving, and flourishing. Visualize yourself, imagine yourself. If you want, rehearse. I don't like pretend, but rehearse. Like whatever that goal is that you have. And sometimes you may need to rehearse the mini goals. The mini goals can be, like for me, visualizing myself, batching my content, visualize myself, being on screen, visualizing myself doing the talks. So what is it? But if anything, you want to see yourself at the finish line. Because if you're not able to see yourself at the finish line, you're not going to be able to get there. Because remember, you're always manifesting. Because you could be doing the task. You could like, oh, well, everything I'm doing is towards that. But you want to be able to see yourself having the conversations, being in the rooms, giving the speech. Y'all, especially for some of us heartfelt individuals, getting the accolades, the rewards, the compliments, because a lot of times you're not always receiving that. But that's just a part of the work where people are showing gratitude. We're saying, to be grateful. So to be grateful of where you are in receiving, because your work speaks to you. So you wanted to be able to take care of yourself physically, doing all of those things. And remember, movement in two parts. Moving your body, and then taking action. And then when it comes to manifesting, how do you see yourself at the finish line? And see yourself thriving and flourishing. But you know what? The best way to do this is to write it down. And even if you need to go to AI, go to Claude or GPT, and say, hey, this is me at the finish line. And you go back and you read it, and you read it, you read it, you read it, you read it, you read it. You see yourself, you create that vision inside your mind, and you rehearse that. That is so important. And kind of going back to our childhood, we thought that pretending, playing house, playing doctors was just like some fantasy thing. No, to be honest, it's neuroscience. Who would have thought? It is neuroscience. So this is why it is so important, one, to have a framework. And the 7M is one of the ways that you get that. And I'm going to repeat the 7 M's again. And today we concentrated on 2 of them. The 7M is your mission, your why. Meditate, motivate, movement, manifest, market, and monetize. And then later on this week, we'll talk about the last 2. And today we focus on movement and manifesting. And remember, when it comes to movement, it's twofold. Move your body so you can center and ground yourself. That is so important as a leader, so important as someone who has a calling, is so important as an entrepreneur. And then especially for you women who have so much going on. Because if you are always on and not able to sit back, and there's different types of resting, but intentional rest so that you can recover. Because if not, then it is wear and tear in your body. And then someone would need to take care of you. Of course, we want our family to take care of you. But if there's anything that you can do to prevent that, to be proactive, because this is the main reason that I'm doing this, because it's what I saw as a therapist. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. How can we prevent people from having to come from having a crisis? No, there are some things in life, that's that. But what I've seen is that we weren't teaching people how to be well. And that's one of the things that I do when I come on here. So when I talk about Take 5 to Thrive or talk about self-care, you're like, oh, I don't need that. I need to know a strategy of how to do this business thing. But you're leaving you out. This is how you get disconnected from yourself. Ask me how. Ask me how I know. Busy working and taking care of everybody else. Again, I wouldn't change a thing of doing any of those things. The only thing that would change is to pour into me more. Because even though I had some practices like affirmations, I always thought I just liked affirmations. But no, I am affirmation. I am affirming. That period of time when for whatever reason, I can't even tell you, that I stopped reading, motivation and inspirational things, because you're pouring into yourself. That helps. With any negative thinking that you may have, it is replacing that. Because even if you do not say anything to yourself, you're telling yourself that you're not worthy. You're telling yourself that you're not enough. You're telling yourself that you don't matter. This is why it's so important for you to pour into yourself. So what are your thoughts? What are your actions? And if you don't know what they are, you can reflect. You can look back and see. And like for me, I always say, well, I don't think that way. But when I look back at my behaviors and my patterns, there's some part of me that believes something. And so that means I need to be more conscious of it and change my behaviors and to feed myself to things that I didn't even know that I need. And what about you? How do you feed yourself? One of the ways that you can feed yourself is with the 7 M's. And with the 7 M is a framework to help you focus and execute. Because you have so much on your plate. And especially as a business person, especially as someone who is heartfelt, because we just want to give our message, Yeah. I remember when I first started, I said, if I can just get somebody else to do that other stuff, I just want to give my message. But one thing I've seen, I'm in some circles, in some groups, it doesn't matter where you are. At some point, you're going to have to do it. So why not now? You're going to have to learn it, because even if you hire someone for your marketing and branding, you still got to have a foundation. But at the end of the day, eventually, you're going to have to do it anyway. So why not learn now? And again, this helps with the mental clutter, because there were things that I kept forgetting, And I'm like, why am I forgetting such and such? because, as I was telling you before, I was in different groups, different coaching programs, and they gave really awesome information. But I was like, but I didn't have a foundation. So they were my foundation. Because sometimes the other things, sometimes you have to repeat things in order for it to stick. And then I was losing certain things, certain concepts. So it helped me with that. And so this is what this does. This is going to help eradicate, because it lets you know where you need to get help. It lets you know what you need to focus on, so you won't be all over the place. But if anything, it integrates self-care, and so that you can, stay grounded, stay focused. And as you are out there with your calling, you can stay connected with yourself. And you could care for yourself without guilt. That's the other thing. Stop having guilt of taking care of yourself or looking after yourself. But take that 5 minutes sometime throughout the day. If you can do it at least 3 times a day of integrated, take 5 to Thrive Today wellness boosters. If you can do some movements, at least once a day throughout the day. Because I want to say, in the mornings and the evenings, most people have some type of routine. Most. But during that day, I feel like that's where the heavy lifting is. And that's where movements in the Take 5 to Thrive can really help. So if you want to get your hand on the best focus and execution system, the 7 M's, so that you won't be all over the place, so that you can at least have a foundation, a framework, so you can function. Because without that, you'd be all over the place and everything would be a crisis, and there would be chaos, and you'd be overwhelmed and overstimulated because you're not sitting down to plan things out so you can implement. So for those of you who want this, comment 7M, and if there's a link somewhere, click on the link. And I will see y'all on the other side.
Recording stopped.
All right. When it comes to TikTok, thanks you all for coming. And I'm just looking to see. And I have an appointment. So. Again, we were talking about how to eradicate mental clutter. And you do that really by planning, y'all. And I'm just looking to see what will you do if when you okay? So he said yes, we'll go. Thank you for the compliment. I'm not sure if I even understand that question. What would you do if when you... I'm not sure if I understand that question. But anyway, I will see you all next time. Make sure that, again, have some added movements. Just remember to center and ground yourself on a daily basis. It's a human thing to do. And it helps you stay connected with yourself and with your calling. And this is how you take care of yourself.